Preparing live stream. I have done this just a couple of times before. Hello, everyone. Okay. It's just redirecting to YouTube.
Streaming. Yeah, it looks like we're streaming. My screen says streaming live on YouTube.
Oh, it's already.
We're there. I think we're live.
Hello, everyone. Can you please, hold on, I'm just checking. I just want to, it's working? Amazing. So we're very professional here at Passion Harvest. Hello. Okay, great. So welcome to Passion Harvest. I'm just going to turn this off. Sorry, I'm going to look at the Zoom one. Okay, ready? Welcome to Passion Harvest. I've got one of my favorite guests on the show who was here before, and his name is Jeff Olsen, and he's had the most incredible near-death experience. And I have a whole intro, but I just have to say welcome, Jeff Olsen. Thank you so much for coming on to Passion Harvest.
Oh, it's such an honor. It's such an honor to be with you, and I always look forward to our conversations. So I've been waiting for this anxiously.
So I'd love to start the show by you talking about your near-death experience and your new book. Congratulations, and then we'll do an audience Q&A if that suits you. So I'll let you get started, Jeff.
Yeah, I would love to. And just to set some context, I want the listeners to understand and the watchers to understand that my NDE, my near-death experience, was the result of an automobile accident that happened actually over 20 years ago. I couldn't even speak of this for a decade. It was very personal, very emotional. It was painful and profound, and it took years before I could really share it. Now, looking back 20 years, I can speak about it. I can speak to it. I'm willing to answer any questions about it. I still sometimes get emotional. So just a precursor and a warning. But the near-death experience was the result of an automobile accident, and the whole family was in the car. We were taking what we call here in the US a road trip. My wife and I had loaded everything in the car. We'd put our two boys in the back seat, and we were driving down to southern Utah, which is near where I live, but it's a 5-hour drive, to see the Red Rocks and to see my wife's family. And so it was a family road trip. And it was the Easter weekend, actually. And we were celebrating Easter down there. And it was on our return home that we had the accident and the near-death experience. But let me just set some context to that as well, because it was interesting in hindsight. So many things are in hindsight sometimes. But as we had said goodbye to my wife's folks, and we were in the car, I buckled the kids in their seats, and we were just getting ready to pull away from the curb. My wife, Tamara, said, "Oh, hey, wait a minute. I thought she may have forgotten something." So I put the car in park, and she said to me, "I just want to go say goodbye to Mom and Dad one more time." Her parents were there on the porch, kind of waving goodbye to the family like they do, the grandkids. And in that moment, I thought, gosh, women, do we really have to say goodbye? We've already hugged. Let's get on the road. I didn't understand the magnificence of this in that moment, but I did notice. I put the car in park, and she jumped out. She ran up to the porch, and I noticed as she not only hugged, but she kissed her mom and dad. And then she ran and got back in the car, and I put it in drive, and we went out on the interstate, and I put the cruise control up to 75 miles per hour, which is as fast as I could go here, on the interstate. And we proceeded up the road heading home. It was going to be about a 5-hour drive. And there was also one other moment, and these are precursors to what happened. There was another moment when I was simply looking in the rearview mirror, just checking traffic. You know, when you're driving and you glance in the rearview mirror to see what's going on behind you, and there wasn't much traffic behind us. But as I glanced, I noticed my youngest son, Griffin. He was just a toddler. He was 14 months old. And he was sound asleep. He was sleeping in his car seat. Now, we had struggled to get Griffin here. After Spencer, our first son, was born, we were told we may not be able to have more children. There'd been complications, and Tamara had some severe endometriosis and other things. But as I glanced, and it was only a moment, as I glanced and saw my youngest son, it's almost like time stopped. I thought, what a miracle. You know, I mean, we were told he would never be here, and there he is, sleeping beautifully in the car seat. And I noticed details. Like I say, in hindsight, this is all so profound, but in the moment, I noticed details like I thought, gosh, look how long his eyelashes are. What a beautiful child. That was my thought. And about that same moment, I heard Spencer, my oldest son, who was 7 years old at the time, and he was playing with little action figures in the seat behind me, and I heard all the joyful noise of a little boy. And I thought, what a gift, you know, what a gift. It was in a glance. I mean, life is simply moments. This was a moment, but it was a profound moment. And I glanced over at Tamara, my wife, who had also reclined her seat, and she had fallen sound asleep, but she was still holding onto my hand. And I had just a conscious moment of that. I thought, wow, we're 10 years into a marriage. We've got these two beautiful boys, and she's still holding my hand. You know, she's still holding my hand like she did on our first date when we were, you know, poor college students at the university. And it was a profound moment of gratitude. And I point those two things out for this reason. Tamara had the whisper, "Stop the car, Jeff. I want to go say goodbye to mom and dad one more time." When that whisper comes in our life, and it always does, honor it. It doesn't mean something bad's going to happen, but she wanted to go say goodbye to mom and dad one more time. And given the events of the day, that was the last goodbye. Also, this glance of mine, this glance in the rearview mirror, but noticing the love I was surrounded with, the blessings I had had in my life.
Yeah.
To that point, you know, there's those little things in life, and the little things are the big things. I wouldn't have known that without the hindsight of what happened. It was about an hour after looking in that rearview mirror that the accident happened. It's difficult to talk about. I lost control of the car. I think what's so difficult, what I believe may have happened, there was reports of heavy crosswinds, and there was reports of a red truck that was driving erratically on the interstate. I believe what happened is I may have just dozed off, just briefly, just a nod. I mean, I hope others have done that maybe, but what happened is I swerved to the right, I overcorrected to the left, and as I did so, I lost control and the car began to roll. Not off the road, but down the road on that hard concrete at 75 miles an hour. It was a horrific automobile accident. They say the car rolled 6 or 8 times. I blacked out for most of that. When the car came to a stop, however, I was completely conscious. And the first thing I heard was Spencer, my son, crying in the back seat, my 7-year-old. Crying hysterically. And as a father, I thought, I've got to get to my boy. I've got to get to my boy. So that's when I realized I couldn't move. That's when I realized I was pinned either to the floorboard or the seat. I couldn't tell. There was all the broken glass. There was the rancid smell of gasoline. And I didn't know it at the time. I was not aware of my injuries. I knew I was in pain. I knew I was struggling to breathe. What had actually happened is both of my legs had been crushed. And shattered. My left leg was eventually amputated above the knee. My back had been broken in 2 places. Oddly enough, the spinal column was not damaged. My right arm had almost been torn completely out and off. It was lacerated really bad. My rib cage was damaged and my lungs were actually collapsing. And then the seatbelt had cut through me and ruptured all my intestines. I was in a horrible state physically. I was unaware of that. All I knew is my son's crying. I've got to get to my son. And that's when I realized no one else was crying. And this is what took me years to even talk about or address. But it was in that moment I realized that my youngest son, Griffin, my little toddler, had been killed in the crash. And I also realized that Tamara, my wife, had also lost her life and been killed in the crash. It was the darkest hell a man could ever be in. Here I am pinned. I'm losing consciousness. I've got a hysterical 7-year-old crying for my help. Half the family's gone, and I was driving the car. You know, the guilt, the regret. I just can't, can I get those 3 seconds back? What just happened? And I don't set that up to be morbid or graphic. Just, it was in that darkness, that absolute darkness, that I felt light come. Words are difficult to explain this at times, but light came. Yeah. And it seemed to surround me. It seemed to comfort me. It seemed to like literally lift as if I was being, raised out of that accident scene. And suddenly the pain was gone. Suddenly I could breathe. And my thought, my question is, how am I okay? How can I possibly be okay? The pain's gone. I'm completely conscious. I'm breathing. What just happened? And then in this light, which I refer to as a bubble of light or a blanket of light, suddenly Tamara, my wife, who I knew was deceased at the scene, suddenly she was there with me. And she was radiant. She was gorgeous. I don't talk about the accident scene, but it was obvious she was deceased there, and it was not a pretty sight. But in this context, she was glorious. She was magnificent, beautiful, perfect. And yet she was emphatic that I could not come. She's like, you can't come. You've got to go. You've got to go. You've got to go back. You can't come. And it was somewhat of a, frantic exchange. But we literally got to discuss the fact that if I came with her, Spencer would be orphaned, our little 7-year-old. And we decided, and I made a choice that I would come back. And she was emphatic, you got to go back. You got to go raise our boy. You've got to go back. You cannot come, were her words. You can't come. And yet I felt there was this cosmic choice. And I learned so much about choice in that moment. I mean, here I was looking at the woman I loved more than life. Yet I knew I had a little boy in the backseat of that car. And I made a choice to come back. Now, as I did so, we have no idea how powerful our thoughts are. I didn't have to figure out how to do that. It was a choice. I am choosing my intention. I'm going back. And in doing so, I found myself wandering around a hospital. Now, I have no concept of time in this bubble of light. What I later found out is people had arrived at the scene. Spencer, my 7-year-old, was banged up a bit, but he was actually okay. He basically walked away from the accident. They had to extricate me from the car and airlift or life flight me to the nearest level 1 trauma center based on my injuries. I had no idea. All I knew is I'd wrecked the car. I'd had this profound moment in this light where I said perhaps the most meaningful goodbye I'll ever say. And then I found myself wandering through this hospital, seeing the patients and the doctors and the families of the patients and the nurses and, a busy level 1 emergency room. And yet I was seeing them in such a profound way. I knew them. It's like I knew everything about them. I knew them as if they were me. I was experiencing what I call the oneness. I mean, everyone I saw, I knew their love, their joy, their hate, their misery, their choices, their challenges. I knew it as if it was me. I was them and they were me. It was a oneness, and there was this profound love. profound love and connection with everyone I saw. It didn't matter who they were, what they looked like, what they had done, or what they hadn't done. There was this profound connection until I came upon a body I didn't feel much from. I didn't feel anything from, which I thought was odd based on the experience I was having. And that's when I stepped forward and looked and realized, oh my goodness, that's me. But that wasn't me. I was having this profound connected experience, but that was my body. And it was a mess. And yet I knew I had to get back in. And that was a profound moment, standing above my body, realizing, wow, I never realized what a miracle, the body is. I mean, I didn't have to teach my eyes to see or tell my heart to beat or my feet to walk. I mean, I had this profound moment of, wow, what a beautiful miracle the body is. But mine was horrifically broken. And again, the thoughts, as I made the choice, I'm going back in, then I was back in the body. But back to the pain, the guilt, the regret, the misery, the trauma, all of it. I spent 5 months in the hospital. I had 18 surgeries in total, putting me back together. I was ventilated. There was a big tube, down my throat doing the breathing from my lungs. My legs were obviously immobile. My right arm was immobile. All I could do, they actually tied down my left arm because I kept grabbing at all the medical equipment. And I learned a whole new meaning to be still. And that's in brief part of the experience, but I've got to share that the door never shut. I had profound experiences in the hospital, out-of-body experiences. I recall on a few occasions standing in the corner watching the doctors work on me, almost as if my soul just needed a break from the body and the pain. And then perhaps the most profound experience was at the end of my hospital stay. After I had gotten out of the intensive care unit and had gone through surgical recovery and all the many things, 18 surgeries in total, putting me back together. But I was in the rehabilitation unit. And I'll cover this briefly because I'd love to get into questions and I'd love to have a dialogue rather than a monologue. Mm-hmm. At the end of my hospital stay, and I was still quite sick, but I was out. I was going to make it. I was in the rehabilitation unit. I had laid so long on my back that all the hair was rubbed off the back of my head. I was bald on the back from laying in bed so long. But one night I felt that light come again. I'd gone into a deep sleep and I felt that light, just like at the accident scene. And I was still in such deep grief over what had happened. And it seemed to comfort me in my grief, just as a father, and what had happened, and as a husband. It was that same comforting light. I felt like I was rising above the hospital bed, except this time the light dispensed. And I was in the most beautiful place. I've heard people say heaven. I've heard them say the spirit world, the other side. The only word that comes close to what I experienced is I was home. I was home. I was so giddy. In fact, I began to run. And that's something I don't do in this life with 2 crushed legs and 1 leg now amputated. There's 6 pins and a plate holding my remaining leg together. But in this experience, I was running. And it was so physical. I could feel the energy of the earth beneath my feet or whatever planet I was standing on. I could feel the intelligence in my calves and thighs, and I was gleefully running when I realized that I wasn't there to stay. It was a knowing. I wasn't there to stay. It was a visit. And about that same time, there was this corridor off to the left, and I intuitively knew I'm to go this way. So I began working my way down the corridor. At the end of the corridor, I encountered a crib. Now, Griffin, my little toddler, had been sleeping in a crib at the time, that he passed. He was just a toddler. And I raced to this crib and looked in it, and there he was. There was my beautiful boy, sleeping as peacefully as when I glanced in that rearview mirror. And again, the details, I noticed how long and beautiful his eyelashes were. And I swept up my boy. And I don't know if listeners, or if you've ever picked up a sleeping child, there's a weight and a heat to them. I mean, it was so, I'm trying to straight, it was such a physical experience. It was a sensory experience. I picked him up. He was warm. He was solid against me. I could feel him breathing. I could feel his breath on my neck. In fact, I leaned over and I smelled his hair. You know, I don't know if you've ever done that to a child. I smelled his hair. It was him. You know, it was him. And I began to weep, and I was crying my boy and crying and kissing my son. And I began to feel this intense presence behind me. And I had so much guilt. I grew up in a conservative Christian home. And what I was feeling was this intense, cosmic, wise, powerful presence. And in my mind, I was thinking, oh no, that's God, or what I call God. And the guilt came up. I thought, my little boy's here because I crashed the car. I mean, his life was cut short because I lost control, and I was weeping, and this presence was coming closer and closer. And as it came so close, I had the fearful thought. I thought, I hope there's some way I can be forgiven. And that's when the most profound thing happened with that thought. And this felt physical too. These divine arms just wrapped around and held me and my son. And then the lid just came off. There was this download of love and peace and connection. The words are difficult, but what happened is these arms held me, or what I call the divine or God. It's like I became that. It's like I became the divine. Suddenly I was seeing and feeling as I suppose God would see and feel. My life came before my very eyes, as they say. I mean, I was watching my life. I saw my parents' divorce. I saw the insecurities that created in me. I saw all the Band-Aids I had put on for the insecurities. I saw things and said, oh, that was a mistake. I didn't mean to do that. But this divine being was communicating to me, there are no mistakes. I was saying, well, I did that, and that was wrong, and I did it anyway. And the divine being was communicating, those are your judgments, not ours. We love you. And here's where it was so mind-blowing, I suppose. I'm holding my little son, who to me is perfect and divine. I mean, he was a gift from heaven, And as I'm holding him, and yet I'm in the arms of the divine who's holding us, it's being communicated and multiplied. As much as you love your little boy, that's how we love you. He is perfect and precious and divine to you. And I'm like, yeah, he is. And they're saying, and you are to us, all of you. So it was a very personal experience, but the profound wave and ripple effect was like, wow, this is how the divine feels about each and every one of us, no matter what. It was such a download of unconditional love. And in all that peace and beauty, I was given a choice. A choice is so big. We have no idea. I've come to the conclusion that the only cosmic law is free will and choice. We get to choose. I was told you can be mad at God your whole life because this happened, and you feel like your family was torn away. I was told you can beat yourself up for the rest of your life in guilt and shame because of what happened. But I was told that I could make a different choice, that I could exercise my will. And that was interesting to a person who had been raised in a conservative Christian home and community. It's like, well, I thought it was your will be done. And this beautiful being said, your will is my will. That's how much we love you. And you've got the choice to give your son. You can exercise your will and give him back, release him, let go, trust, and hand him over so it doesn't feel like he was ripped away. And in all that love and peace and beauty, I was able to kiss my little boy. And I gave him back. I handed him over. And And then I came to myself or woke up or whatever in the hospital bed, back to the amputations, the braces, the slings, the injuries, the colostomy bag, all that was going on. But with a little bit different perspective. In fact, with a lot different perspective. And it didn't, I mean, I don't want anybody to think that I had this horrible accident and had some profound experiences and then I was okay. No, I had a horrible accident. I had profound experiences and I grieved like anyone would grieve. I think the experiences are the only thing that got me through. Otherwise, I don't know. I might be that guy strung out on a corner somewhere with a sign up wondering what happened, you know. But that's in a nutshell. I mean, you can certainly, there's so much more detail in knowing. That my latest book, I mean, it goes through the pretense, what happened, and the aftermath. And the aftermath is perhaps the most beautiful part. And I'll wrap up with that. I was able to heal. I was able to return home. I was able to get to my 7-year-old son who, gosh, our relationship's amazing. I had angels come, you know, some in this realm. Sometimes my angels were my brothers. Sometimes it was angelic help. I fell in love again. Tanya, my current wife, I fell in love again. I feel like she was sent. In fact, I know she was sent by Tamara, who had passed, to come, and she's the hero of this story, the way she's come into our lives and held space for me to heal and become Spencer's mother. And we adopted 2 boys after we were married, and I don't call them my adopted boys. They're just my sons. And there's been so many miracles. And like I say, it's been over 20 years. It was not an easy journey. And there was many, many, many days, weeks, months, and moments that I was not okay. But I had so much support. And I've wondered, what do people do who do it alone? And it's made me far more compassionate. You know, when people say, hey, what did you get out of all this? I'm like, I believe I got empathy. I believe I got empathy. And empathy is a good thing. But anyway, I would love to open this up and have. I've rambled on. Let's talk. Let's have communication.
Well, first, I want to say, Jeff, you are such an amazing inspiration, and I thank you for your openness and honesty. And really, I mean, I could have got the tissue box out a few times, but I could listen to you all day. You're so inspiring. And we have a previous interview from about a year ago, and profoundly for me, you spoke about moments, how precious and important the moments are. But I also want to say, before we get to, I want to ask you 2 questions, and there's quite a few questions from the audience. I want to say congratulations on your new book, Knowing, which you spoke about. It's in more detail. Are you able to share the screen of your book or hold up your book for the audience?
I can do both. Knowing, it's available.
You're so technical.
So technical. It's available on Amazon. I mean, you can go on Amazon. It's in all formats: digital, paperback, hardback. It's not in Audible yet. Folks have been begging me to get in the studio and read it myself. Here's the trouble. I can't read it without bawling. You know, it's like we have to stop. I've really just opened my soul, and it's a compilation of the first 2 books, but with deeper insights and extended chapters, right up into including Spencer, my oldest son, who's now 30 years old, his marriage and him falling in love, and watching the conclusion of what I was sent back to do. You know, I'm now looking at a really good man that has a really good wife, and I'm old and gray. But anyway, knowing is it's a personal memoir where I just kind of put my heart and my tears and my soul all over the pages.
Okay, so I'll just ask you one question, because we've got lots of questions coming through. I know you mentioned, and many people think when someone has a near-death experience or these profound experiences, that it's okay. And it's not always, it certainly hasn't been the case for you, but you're such a positive person. For someone who's experiencing something similar or certain hardship, what's your advice for them to overcome negativity and the fear and the doubt of the future, and to be a little bit more positive like you, or perhaps even an inspiration?
Well,
What's your advice?
you didn't see me on my bad days when somebody was picking me
Yeah.
up off the floor. Advice, I don't know that I give advice, but here's what worked for me. Keep breathing. Just keep breathing. I mean, sometimes it's just like,
Okay.
let's get to the next breath, and then to the next breath, and then to the next breath, and maybe to the next minute, maybe to the next hour, and maybe to the next day. And what I realize, sometimes when we're in those darkest moments is when we're most beautiful to the other realms. I know I was held in loving arms of either those who had passed, my wife and son, by the divine, by angels. Just keep going and realize it will get better. It will get better. I can talk about this now. I used to just sob. I couldn't even say their names. I have a dear friend that said, grief is like carrying a stone in your pocket. It never goes away, but you get used to the weight. And in hindsight, and now, way out in front of it, those that are going through it, keep breathing. Realize it's the expansion of your soul, and that's a difficult thing to take right now, I know. But also realize they're never gone. They're never gone. They're with you. They become angels to you. And although you don't see them and have those arms that held you there, they're there. And they will see you through, and you will find your way through. And it's all in divine order. Real quickly, when I was in those divine arms and I was seeing my life, I realized and was communicated to me that everything is in divine order. It's all love. We put all kinds of judgments on it, all kinds of, I don't want the hard things. I want this to be over. I want to be done. But in those divine arms and in a different, higher perspective, I realized, wow, what a gift. Life's a gift, even the difficult things, because it's the expansion of our hearts and it's the expansion of our souls.
Beautiful. Okay, so we're ready to open it up to questions. We'll start with the first one. Richard, my question to Jeff is this. During his NDE, did he still have his 5 physical senses?
Oh, what a beautiful question, Richard. Yes.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah.
Yes. And I perhaps didn't emphasize that. The senses were magnified. Did I still have them? Yes, and yet in multiplicity. I mean, gosh, and this is interesting to say, when I was saying goodbye to Tamra, and she was emotional. She was crying about, you got to go back. They weren't in my mouth, but I could taste her tears. When I was running, when I did the visit to say goodbye to Griffin, when I was running, wow, I could feel the ground under my feet, the energy of it, but I was the ground and the flowers and the grass and everything that was alive in me. I cannot explain. They're not words, but my senses, my 5 senses, touch, taste, smell, sound, all of it, sight, were enhanced. They were even more so. In fact, I now say this realm, this is the foggy, weird, cloudy dream. That was crystal clear reality, and the senses were magnified in my experience.
Thank you. That was beautifully answered. Perhaps you can answer this one. It's from Pamela Mears, and she said she had whispers about 25 years ago about things that came to fruition. In your opinion, where do these whispers or these knowings come from about our lives?
That where do they come from?
That's a hard question. Sorry.
Well, yeah, yes and no, though. I mean, here's what many of them for me are perhaps my higher self, my spiritual knowing. In other words, nothing is by chance. We're here playing this out, having our experience. They could also come from the divine. come from a greater source, a source greater than me. They could also come from loved ones or guides or the angelic realms. I think they could come from a number of sources. It's beautiful that you hear them and honor them. I mean, it's interesting. Tamra, my first wife, had a dream. In fact, it was the dream the day before we left for the road trip. So it was a few days before the accident. And she hesitated to even share it with me. And I thought we were going to, we didn't really fight, but I thought we were going to have an argument about it because she dreamed that I was marrying someone else. And I'm like, dear, why would you dream that? I mean, I'm in love with you. You know we're good. Do you think I'm unfaithful? I mean, you can imagine the conversation between a couple if one of them saying, I dreamt you were marrying someone else. But she shared, even in sharing it, she said it was so weird because she said, I wasn't angry. She was wondering, why did I have this dream and he was marrying someone else and I wasn't angry? Well, again, in hindsight, maybe that was a whisper. Tamra was very intuitive. And Tanya, my current wife, I think I've married the most intuitive women in the world on these occasions because, and who's lucky enough to find love twice? I feel so lucky.
You're a lucky man.
Lucky. There's no other word. I'm lucky.
I won't go on a tangent here, but you did mention gratitude during your experience, and you certainly have a great deal of gratitude now. I think this is so important in our life.
Yeah, I've looked at, I saw a human emotions chart recently, and it said that shame was the lowest vibration, and that gratitude was the highest vibration. Even over love, gratitude was the highest vibration. Wow. I found that interesting. I've experienced deep shame, but I've also experienced profound gratitude. And when I have my bad days, I find something to be grateful for. Sometimes I'll write it down. What are 3 things I'm grateful for? And it rises my vibration.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Everyone, please keep doing the questions. We will get to you. This is a question from Gogo. Can people have experience with supernatural not having a near-death experience?
Absolutely. Please don't think that you've got to go through something horrific to have a profound, mystical, out-of-body, connected experience. I'm probably just slow to learn, and this was my path, but you can most certainly have a divine connected experience without being hurt or without being near death. Interesting enough, in my story, a nurse and the attending physician at the level 1 trauma center, they experienced my wife, Tamra. They experienced her spirit in the operating room and recounted that to me at one point, which is amazing that clinical medical staff, they weren't having a near-death experience. They weren't injured. They were alive, well, alert in the operating room, and they not only saw her, but she communicated to them. And interesting you bring that up. I asked them, what did she communicate? And they said she simply shared her gratitude for what we were doing to save your life. And I thought, well, that's exactly what she would do. And I knew they were telling the truth.
Yeah, that's beautiful. A question from Hope Park Junction. Does the experience of having been beyond the veil make the ordeals of this life easier or harder to deal with?
God, these are such great questions. Such a great question.
Thank you, Mike. His name's Mike.
Mike. Oh, Mike is awesome. Again, I'm at choice. I make them as difficult or as graceful as I choose to make them. Now, I have challenges every day. Gosh, my youngest son just got out of rehab. I mean, stress, work, pandemics, whatever else is going on, we're always going to have challenges. And I realized at one point in the hospital, I was sitting there watching the heart monitor beat. And I thought, why does life have such highs and lows? Why does life go up and down? Yeah. And then in that moment of the heart monitor, I thought, oh, because I'm alive. If it's all even, then flatlined. I'm flatlined and I'm out of here. But does it make them easier or harder? For me, it's made them more bearable, because instead of asking, why is this happening to me? I say, what am I learning? What is the universe teaching me in this challenge? And for me, oftentimes it's teaching me love. Once again, it's teaching me love and trust. When will I love unconditionally? When will I trust my higher good? And that's how I get through it.
That's great. Oh, this is Randall that's just joined us here. Sorry about that, everyone. My microphone's gone.
Randall,
sorry, a little bit of entertainment.
I like it.
The next question from Patchy. Have you ever since then felt the same warmth in awake or dream state?
Oh, yes. Read knowing. The door never shut. My wife who has passed has come to me. My wife who has passed has come to my current wife. My son, Griffin, who passed as a toddler, he's come to me as a grown young man. I have encountered him in a dream state. I call it a vision. I wasn't necessarily sleeping, but he has come to me as well. So yes, I do experience those things. They're subtle. Sometimes they aren't subtle at all and powerful. My son, Spencer, as a 7-year-old boy who went through everything I did, we had an interesting conversation when he was in early, adulthood. He was 19, 20 years old. He's like, Dad, I don't experience those things. You talk about these dreams and these visions and this. He's like, I didn't get any of that. My mother died, my brother died, my dad will never be the same. And I don't get my answers that way. It comes different to everyone. I have had many of those experiences. He hasn't. Interesting, we've come to the same conclusion. He kind of said, I'm going to give up on all that you talk about the universe. But he said, I'm just going to be God's love. I'll just be God's light. I'll just reach out to those kids who are in trauma that, like I was, that weren't getting these answers. And he's the most compassionate man I know. But we all get it in our own way. I don't want people to think, hey, this happens to Jeff, so it should be happening to me. No, you're on your own personal journey. We all have different gifts, and whatever you're experiencing is perfect for your soul's expansion.
Yeah. Great. Again, thank you for that. Ken Leth. Hello, Ken. A question for Jeff. Jeff, does Jeff recall any yellow light during his crash? I think it means angelic protection.
I blacked out during the crash. I can't honestly say I remember that. However, Spencer, as a little boy, he said he was held very tightly during the accident. And like I say, he was banged up. He bruised his ribs and he cracked his wrist. But he said he was held very tightly during the accident. And that's, he experienced something like that, even though he'll say, well, I didn't experience anything. I did not see yellow light that I recall. But that's not to say that isn't very, very evident in many other occasions. I see now, not during the NDE or during the accident, I will see violet hues in my life now, and golden hues. And you could say, well, it's the sun. I love sunrise and I love sunset. But part of what I love is it's as if the light changes. It's as if I feel those angelic realms of violet and gold become tangible. And that's what I love. But it was not during the accident. I experienced that now, far after the accident.
I love that too. I mean, I guess it goes back to the gratitude. Gosh, you express yourself so beautifully. Thanks, Jeff. A question from Ms. Riverdee. Jeff, did you ever see Tamara again after that first time she told you to go back?
Yes. In fact, and I'll share this briefly. And again, when I say I'm the luckiest man, there was a point during my life. In fact, I had remarried actually. And life was moving forward, but I was really struggling at one point. Spencer was struggling. Tanya, my current wife, and I weren't getting along great in that moment, as relationships sometimes go. We certainly weren't separated or divorced, but we were not getting along very well. The new boys were a struggle. Tamara came to me in a dream, and I went to bed. Let me set the context. I'll be brief. I went to bed thinking it had been better if I had died. It had been better if I'd have stayed. Why did I come back? My oldest son, my teenager's off the rails. We're struggling with these two boys and all that life offers. Tanya's, what I was feeling is I convinced Tanya to come into my life and I've made her miserable. That's what I was feeling. I thought it'd be better if I died. Anyway, as I slept, and I was sleeping, this was a sleeping dream. Tamara, my wife who has passed, my first marriage, she came to me in the dream. And here I was in the doldrums, and she came dancing. She came dancing, and she put her arms around my neck and spun and danced around me, and then she kissed me on the cheek. And I thought, why the cheek? Let's plant one on the kisser here. But I realized she was honoring the fact that you're married to Tanya now. And she pulled back, and she said to me verbally, in the dream, she said to me verbally, all that exists here is wisdom. And then she looked at me, and the nonverbal communication started, and she communicated, it doesn't matter what you did, what you didn't do, what you're going through. All that matters is what you're learning. And I had a biblical verse. There's a verse about cast your burdens on the Lord and I will make them light, which I used to think was lighter, easier to carry. But as my wife who had passed, as Tamara's looking at me, she's saying, no, they become illuminated. These challenges, these judgments, these things that you heap upon yourself, if you will trust, can be illuminated into light, into wisdom. That's all that exists here. Let go of the judgments, let go of the comparisons, and lean into love. And then she said farewell, and I woke up the next morning, but I was over it. I didn't feel like it was better if I'd have died. I thought, wow, she came to teach me in a dream, and I threw my arms around Tanya, my current wife, and said, let's fix all this, and let me be a better man, so that I show up for you in a different way.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Jeff. This kind of coincides. Robert Miller says, I lost my wife and I don't feel her. It hurts. I guess your advice would be for someone who's lost a loved one, which you have touched on. How do you try and connect with them and cope with the grief? Yeah,
there was many times I didn't feel Tamara. I'm like, she's gone. I mean, there was many of those dark days where I don't feel her. I had this near-death experience. I said goodbye, but I don't feel her. And at one point, and in fact, this is when I began to have feelings for Tanya, and I felt guilty about it. I went to Tamara's grave, and I was angry at her. I was literally saying, how dare you? You left me. Here I am, I'm limping, I'm attempting to raise our son, and you're in that beautiful place. And I was picking a fight. I didn't feel her near. And as I berated her at the gravesite, she came to me. I don't see her, but I felt her presence. And she said, I loved you enough to go. And I'm like, what? And there was this download of soul groups, of a contract perhaps, that we had decided that we were going to come and fall in love and she was going to leave. And she loved me that much because that was my soul's expansion. And she communicated, I would have loved nothing more than to stay and grow old with you, but we had a different deal. And of course, in my fighting mode, I'm like, well, I'm having feelings for another woman. And she laughed at me. She said, of course you are. I know who you are. I know how you are. I know you're lonely. And she actually said, I sent Tanya in your path. And I'm begging you to choose joy. she said, we're still connected. I'm only as happy as you are, and I'm watching you in misery and your struggle and your grief. And she asked me to choose joy, to move forward. And quite honestly, she said, you're a pretty good dad, but Spencer needs a mom. And she gave permission that I move forward in this new relationship. And the interesting thing is then I felt her go. And I realized, wow, I didn't think I was feeling her. She's actually been here the whole time, and only now can she really go, because she knew I was going to be okay. And perhaps you're not feeling your wife because she knows you're going to be okay. It's going to be a dark night of the soul. And yet it's little things. Tamara came to me one time in the rustling of the leaves in the aspen trees because I was so lonely. And I'm like, you're not here. And she said, when you hear the leaves rustle, that's me just blowing you a kiss. It's in the little things.
Beautiful. Yes, it might not just, they're not like you would know a living person has a conversation like I am with you now. It's as you said perfectly, it's the little things. So just be open to that. A question from Immortal Explorer. I have a question. How do I know that I'm on the right path? And how can God continue to forgive me for straying off course? How do I know that I'm on the right path? And how can God continue to forgive me for straying off course?
You know, when I said to the divine, I hope I can be forgiven, the actual communication was, there is nothing to forgive. Your life is in perfect order. So I'm wondering if we ever truly can stray. We might do things that cause guilt or pain in our lives, but if we're learning from them, that's a gift. We brush ourselves off, and the divine says, wow, look at my children. They're learning to walk. You know, they fell down or they slobbered on themselves over here, but look at these beautiful souls learning to walk. To forgive is to give as it was before. There is nothing to forgive. The biggest challenge for me was to forgive myself. The divine already had. There was nothing to forgive. For me to forgive myself, that was the challenge. That was the struggle. And that was the victory in the end as well, to say, wow, I can forgive myself and move forward. And you're on the right path. I don't think there's any way to not be on it. I mentioned my youngest son, and he wouldn't mind me sharing this. I've watched him struggle with addiction and recovery. And now we look at each other and he says, you know what? I'm the man I am because I experienced that, not in spite of me experiencing that. Our life is a gift and it's perfect. And if we walk in that gratitude, then the shame and the guilt and those other things go away. And you are on the right path simply because you're here and you're being you. I don't think there's any way to not be on the right path.
That's so beautiful. That's going to stay with me. I forgive myself. That was just perfect. Many people are saying, I love this interview so much. Thank you so much, Jeff. I'll go on to the next question. Very similar. Can we be forgiven even if we are so distraught and ashamed of the things we have done? You just answered that, but if you don't mind.
Well,
even if we're distraught and ashamed of the things we have done.
Yeah, ashamed. Shame is such a low, but I was so ashamed. I was driving the car. I mean, I don't know deeper guilt. It took the life of half my family, my son and my wife, and changed my oldest surviving son's life forever and maimed me forever, and at least in this realm. Let it go. Let it go. The key is self-forgiveness and self-love. And, you know, there's the famous story of Michelangelo that had the bent, curved piece of marble, and he chiseled it and chiseled it and chiseled it. And at the end of the day, what emerged was David, the beautiful sculpture. And I don't know if you've stood in front of David, and you may have a chance to do that where you are. When they asked Michelangelo, how did you do it? He said, I just took away everything that wasn't David. He was always there. I think that's what we do in our lives. If we could just chip away everything that's not me, and the things I've done in my life that I'm most ashamed of, or that I used to feel ashamed of, it was all based in love. It was all a cry for love. And yet, when I love myself, I have all the love I ever need. And so that cry quiets down and I'm calmed like a calmed child. Self-love and self-forgiveness is the reason we're here.
All I can say is beautiful again. I'm just going to keep repeating this because it's so perfect. I'm just so inspired by all your answers. A quick question from Clee back. Do you know what your earthly son's soul goal is and yours? That's a hard one. Your soul's goal.
My soul's goal. I'll tell you, I do know mine. I mean, I literally, and I came back with this in some ways, but I'm here to, in some way, manifest the unconditional love I experienced there. You know, to literally bring forth truth and compassion and forgiveness and light and oneness, really. My son, my oldest son, the one I spoke of, he's a musician. He plays music. He works with traumatized kids, and they'll play rock and roll and just get it all out, you know. And I also think he's an older, wiser soul than me. I think he had a soul contract with me. He said, Dad, I'll come walk with you, even if you limp, and I'll see you through this, that your soul learns and gets what it came to do. And next time around, maybe we'll do it different. Maybe we'll have a different arrangement within our soul group. But I'm here to love, and I'm here to manifest unconditional love. And that's my soul's journey at this point.
Amazing. And I'm just reading some more of the comments that will be up. I think they take a while to be uploaded when this episode's released. So many comments saying, oh my God, I love this. Your Judy Cassidy. Hello, Judy. Your joy is so helpful. They're just so inspired by your words. From Mina Z. Hi, Louisa and Jeff. When I go back home, do our loved ones, will they be waiting for us?
My answer is a resounding yes. Every time I've gone in those realms, whether it was to hold Griffin or say goodbye to Tamara, or even when they come to me, I think I don't think anybody goes alone. And I firmly believe, I mean, my experience, I know our loved ones are there waiting, watching, open arms. Even what I call the divine was there with open arms. And I would say a resounding yes.
A lot of people are saying thank you. I don't know what to ask because you've already answered the questions. Immortal Explorer just wanted to say addiction's been has had me by the balls.
Yeah, it
What's
does.
your advice?
It does that, and it's not nice. When it's got you, it's got you. I became addicted to morphine in the hospital. Now they'd given me a self-administrating. I could hit that morphine button anytime I wanted a shot of morphine, and later found out they weren't sure if I was going to live, so they thought make him comfortable. You know, that's my experience with addiction, I suppose. But watching my son. I think many addictions are homesickness. You know, mine was an escape. It's like, I just got to get out of it. It wasn't even the physical pain. I need a release from this emotional trauma, this burden. It's all a scream for love. And yet that self-love, once again, suddenly the external addiction is no longer necessary because you've got everything you need within. And, you know, and if I could expound on that a little bit, just a little bit, Louise, I say, hey, manifest love, you know, you're here to do miracles. People have asked me that. Well, you must be here for a profound reason. And I laugh and say, yeah, you know, to play catch with my son, or take that phone call when he just needs to talk, or to feel Tanya's foot rub against my one foot, you know, as we wake up in the morning. Or to watch one more sunset. The big things are the little things. I promise. It's in those little things that the joy is found. There is no big, profound, you know, thing unless it's just you dealing with addiction. That's a miracle, you know. And there is no big things that overshadow the small things. The little things are what is big.
Thanks, Jeff. Just a few. I'll do a few more questions if you're okay with that.
Oh yeah, I'm
Okay. This is a challenging concept in general. There is evil around us. It's not that I don't see love, but my eyes are wide open to the evil in the world.
Yes. We live in a world of duality. We live in a world of choice. And this is a profound question. I think there's only two motivating powers in the entire universe. It's fear or it's love. And I ask myself every day almost, am I operating out of fear or am I operating out of love? And if I choose love, my experience and my choices seem to be much different than if I'm choosing fear. Yes, there is duality. Call it evil, call it what you will. The beautiful thing is if I choose love, perhaps that will ripple out and can affect the people in my home and maybe the people in my neighborhood and maybe the people at work and maybe the people in the county and the state and the hemisphere. And maybe by me choosing love, it can ripple out into the whole world. And I feel very strongly that's what we're here to do. I think the universe watches and says, well, what will they choose? We love them no matter what. What will they choose and what will they create and what will they bring, given all that free will they get to operate in?
Great answer again. Just perfect. Well, a few questions about 9/11, which happens to be today.
That's today. Big day. Yeah.
Yeah, we booked this a while ago, but it just happened this way. Jeff, help please. I can't reconcile that on 9/11 and the terrible atrocities that were perpetrated on this day, how God can forgive a thing which has had such a huge impact on so many people. And there's quite a few others about 9/11.
Yes.
Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, let's speak to that. You know, tragedies happen. People make choices. And there's all kinds of judgments about the choices people make. I mean, yes, 9/11 was a tragedy. Many people do what they believe is right. You know, you might talk to another constituency that would feel that was right. I'm not saying it was right. I get the tragedy. What were the results? And I'll long-term results. I remember when 9/11 happened. I will never forget it. Watching it. My father is a retired lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army. He's a military man. And I remember his advice on the phone. He was concerned about chemical warfare. What was in those planes? What was going on? You know, the fear, the fear and the chaos. For a moment, the whole country pulled together. I mean, for a moment, the whole world supported in some way. If that's the result, let's hold on to that. I know thousands lost their lives. I know this was based in hate. I get all of that. But if I can dwell on what happened that was positive and recreate that without the catastrophe, gosh, what if we had a pandemic of love? What if we just decided? Yeah, what if we just decided, you know what, let's let go of all of our judgments and our comparisons and our hatred and our division. And what if we just embraced that we're one? And what if we supported and loved each other no matter what? How quickly could that spread across the world? And how quickly could we look at life and all the burdens and all the challenges and all the tragedies that happen and say, what if we just pulled together instead of trying to get back? What if we just pulled together and healed it instead of always trying to get even? It might be a little different. Great question. It's a difficult question. I don't have all the answers.
Very difficult.
Yeah, I'll give you my answer in this moment and how I feel today. But I recall how we all pulled together. They did a special service here in the city I live in, and they had a choir sing, an angelic choir sing, and they remembered. They remembered. They put together pieces of, wow, here's what happened. We'll never forget that. We will always remember it. And what I personally chose to remember was the way it pulled everyone together rather than the way it tore everyone apart. And that's my personal choice.
And it's so true. The central theme about here is we get to choose in each moment. I do believe our consciousness creates our reality. In each moment, well, not all the time. You've had certainly dark nights of the soul, but you chose love and you chose forgiveness at the end of the day. And despite what we see externally, it's our choice how to perceive it and how to move forward in moments, I guess.
Yes.
Renan, happy birthday on 9/11. There's quite a from Tracy Maddox. Jeff, I get so much hope from your words. Question: do you think companion animals are part of our soul group? You're getting hard questions, and they will be waiting for us. Companion animals.
Yeah, these are beautiful
questions.
Beautiful questions. Yes, I grew up on a farm. We had horses and cows and dogs, and yes. There is no living being. I don't care if that's a tree that comes into your life that doesn't have a gift and a way to serve. And I was recently at a near-death experience gathering of sorts. And one of the women that had a near-death experience, and she grew up in a rural area, and she was older like me, but her father came to her in the near-death experience riding on his favorite horse with his favorite dog in tow. And that's how he manifested in her experience when he came to greet her as she went through the tunnel, so to speak. And I'm a firm believer that our companion animals, they have souls too. And there's no coincidence, there's no accidents that they're in our lives. And love is love. And that love is what's eternal. And they will be part of our experience because we are the creators of that experience. And I believe there's so much will in the universe. If I choose to have my companion animal as part of my experience, the universe loves us so much, it says yes.
I agree. Gosh, there's just so many, not even questions, but thank you, Jeff, for your speaking. It's eerie how you're speaking straight to my soul. Thank you so much. They're making all the questions. I'll just go through a few. I'll just go through a few more. Immortal Explorer. One final thing. Sorry, Louise. I listen to you every episode, and I have to say you have the most beautiful smile. Thank you. I'll keep moving on. It's just a lot of thank yous and thank you and talking about dream and death. And if there's there are a few other questions, but if there's not a lot, I think you've covered so much. I really have to say, Jeff Olsen, thank you so much for being on Passion Harvest, and you've shared such insights. Is there any questions that I haven't potentially asked or the audience hasn't asked you that you'd like to share?
No, what a beautiful audience and fantastic. I love spending any time with you, and you're doing such a good thing in the world, Louise. I mean, Passion Harvest, it is a harvest of passion, and the passion is love and goodness and kindness and inclusion. And I just champion anything you can do. I champion everything you're doing. Anything I can do to support you, certainly let me know. And thank you for allowing me to be a guest. It's been an honor. It's been truly an honor.
Oh my gosh, it's been an honor. Don't tell anyone, but you're actually my favorite guest. It's come back for a second time. I'm really honored. And again, thank you to the Passion Harvest audience, or as I call it, the Passion Harvest family, for being here, whether you're here right now as we're talking or watching the replay. Jeff, where's the best place for people to find you if they'd like to connect with you? And your details will be in the show notes. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that was great. No, I'm on social media. It's under my full name, which is Jeffery, Jeffery, middle initial C, Olsen, Olsen. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and things that way. That's also my email, just jeffreycolson@gmail.com. But you can go to Envoy Publishing. Envoy is French for messenger. Envoypublishing.com, and there's all kinds of ways to connect with me there and see what's going on. And gosh, we're doing small gatherings, and we're doing online gatherings, and we're doing all kinds of fun things. So stay connected. Do reach out.
Yes. Well, Jeff, I have to say thank you. Thank you. You're doing an amazing work, and you're such an inspiration to so many. And check out Jeff's latest book, Knowing, and on Amazon. Thanks so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Thanks, Jeff. I think we're still live, but I think I've ended it. So